Welcome back to another edition of Boilers Extra. I'm Nathan Baird from the Indianapolis Star.
Sam King from the Journal and Courier back in West Lafayette after some travel struggles getting out of Detroit. But I did eventually make it home last night. And, along the process, found out some basketball news with the Gonzaga series coming up, which is, I think, something exciting for fans. And
not a series, just a one game.
Yeah, one game in Las Vegas. So, I know Purdue travels well. That's probably a destination that I'm sure a lot of fans will be excited to go to.
I would be excited to go. We'll see how it works out. Sam and I have every year some way that we figure out to decide who's going to go where, because only one of us typically flies, whether it's a football or basketball road trip, until we get to the NCAA tournament for basketball. So we'll just, as usual, we'll hold a series of freestyle rap battles and to decide who makes these trips, and maybe we'll do them here on the pod.
And then people can vote on the pod.
Yeah. So just keep watching this pod every week. Subscribe and like if you want to come back and watch Sam and I do 8 Mile style rap battles to decide which road trips we go on. That's my solemn promise to all of you. So we're going to answer some questions again. Thank you to all of you who sent them in. And I think we should just jump right into the topic at hand, because it leads into why you were coming back through Detroit last night. And I apologize, I copied these down without the names. So if I don't say your name, I apologize, because some of these are left over from last week. But John Groth, who is a former colleague of ours from here in Central Indiana Media, asks us, where does that game rank in the craziest Purdue games you've covered? He's referring to Tuesday night's Purdue overtime win at Nebraska, and the craziest games of all high school, college, and pro. So let's just start there. A crazy game. We talked about it after in our post-game pod a little bit. It's hard for me to, in Purdue history, it's pretty easy. Like, the two that jump directly into my mind are the Cincinnati NCAA tournament game in 2015, and then the Little Rock game in 2016, which is an even better example. And in some ways it resembled this even more. I think they were up 9 with a minute something left, or 7 with a minute something left, against Cincinnati and Louisville, and lost. And both of these happened to be losses. And then in Little Rock, they were up 13 with 3 minutes and change to go, I think, and ended up losing in double overtime. And the kind of games where, as John would know, and as you said after the game, you just kind of paint all your text and hit delete and start over frantically. If there's things that you read that we post at the buzzer or right after a game that don't make a lot of sense to you, that's why. And you're trying to synthesize things and plan ahead and write kind of both sides of a game as you're going, because you don't know how it's going to turn out. But those are the two that jump out to me, of where there's just that scramble to, and there's probably been others. I've covered other overtime games, but those are the two that jump out to me as the craziest that I have covered in person. I wasn't there Tuesday night, but that goes right in that same conversation.
I figured you might say the 2019 Elite Eight.
Sure.
Game as well.
Obviously, yes.
And then
Virginia in Louisville as well.
For those who don't know, Nathan used to cover high schools in Lafayette, and he also covered a sectional basketball game where a kid heaved in a 94-foot shot at the buzzer.
So I looked for that, actually. It was McCutcheon against Kokomo, I believe. What's that?
Logansport, I think it was.
Logansport, okay. I know the Kokomo guys were there because somebody from Kokomo got a video of the shot. And I cannot remember the player's name for the life of me.
Trayshawn Hurd.
Okay, there you go. And I don't have good memory of a lot of the high school stuff that I covered at the Journal and Courier. It's been a long time now. And so I'm sure there are some examples from those days of, you'd always cover like a Class 2A baseball sectional final, and it's Seeger against Carroll, and everybody's out of pitching, and both teams score 3 or more runs each in both halves of the last 3 innings, and it's a 16-15 final or something like that. There's definitely some examples of that, I'm sure. But um, oh, as far as like the back and forth nature of a game, or just that long, this isn't even really necessarily back and forth, although it kind of was, but like just that long whittling away of a big lead and then the extension into overtime. Like those are some of the examples I thought of.
From a Purdue perspective, I haven't seen I guess I've seen some crazy games, but uh, just for the impact, and Purdue fans won't like this one, but I was sitting there with, speaking of writing something at the buzzer, with 2 minutes to go in the first round of an NCAA tournament game in Columbus, Ohio, and I had nothing on my screen. And I turned to Akeem Glaspie, who works at the Indy Star, and I said, I don't know what to write or how to put this into context. This is the biggest upset in the history of the NCAA tournament. And Purdue, being a 1 seed, is going to lose to a team that had to win a play-in game, or I guess the first 4 game, or whatever it's called, to get to play Purdue. And it just,
that playing game. You can say playing game on this podcast.
Do what?
We could say play-in game on this podcast. We're not here to spare anyone's feelings.
So yeah, just from the impact that had, because that will forever be talked about as one of the greatest upsets, or the greatest upset in NCAA tournament history. So that kind of goes into the crazy category because it was so unpredictable, but it also was a game that Purdue was trailing throughout and just could never seem to make the play to get ahead. Trying to think of something else on the other side of it. I guess Purdue, even though it wasn't crazy, Purdue beating Tennessee in the Elite Eight in 2024, just because of, it was in Detroit. It was 90% Purdue fans. The place was loud and it felt like a home game. But as soon as that game was over, people who are even usually cool, calm, and collected, and people who are professionals in this business, like Robbie Hummel, are in tears because they know what this means for Purdue fans. They knew what it meant to Matt Painter to go to a Final Four. And for that, that was just kind of crazy to be on the court as all that's kind of taking place, and nobody was leaving the arena in Detroit. And it was kind of like the biggest party and a big monkey off the back of Purdue fans who had waited forever for that. I can't think of anything that's kind of symbolic where it's a big lead that gets blown, or Purdue coming back from a massive deficit to come back and win a game that it maybe wasn't supposed to or didn't seem likely.
I would throw in for you, what about that the bowl game against Tennessee from a few years ago?
Well, yeah, that if it's open to all sports, definitely that Tennessee Purdue Music City Bowl, where whichever team had the ball last was going to win. Turned out not. I guess it did turn out to be the case. I think Purdue kicked the field goal after stopping Tennessee on 4th down from the 1 yard line. So that was wild for a lot of different ways. And Purdue, without some of its best players who opted to not play in the bowl game to prepare for the draft, which has since become a trend. I remember that was a hot topic at the time. A lot of fans were like, don't give them any team awards and this and that. And now it's, almost everybody who isn't in the college football playoff who is a NFL draft prospect is opting out of the bowl game. But there's that. There is a high school baseball game that was I want to say a regional championship in Whiting, Indiana, years ago. Central Catholic had won in the morning and then got to the night game, and I can't remember who it was playing, but the game went 18 innings. This is back in the days when newspapers still had deadlines, and we're in the top of the 18th inning at 11:50 with this page has to go out at midnight, and I'm being told you have to send us something. And I said, I can't. It's 3-3. I don't know what's going to happen. Like, we're just going to have to put it in the next day's paper and call it what it is. And then Central Catholic scores 4 runs in the top of the 18th. And I'm like pounding my fist, like so frustrated that this didn't happen 2 hours earlier so I could go home. But that was quite a wild game for sure as well. Now, I've seen my share of half-court shots at the buzzer. I've seen 2 state championship games in boys basketball that essentially came down to the last shots, things like that. But just the way the game transpired, where Purdue was up 26 at halftime, and Nebraska's good, but you don't think Purdue is so inept offensively. It wasn't inept, just missed a bunch of shots and had some crucial turnovers. But to not be able to hold on to a 26-point lead over a 20-minute span was pretty unfathomable.
I'm also thinking of the Purdue baseball regional semifinal in 2012 that they were playing up in Gary against Kentucky went into the wee hours of the morning too. So anyway, enough of sports writer memories as sponsored by the Kohl's Clearance Rack. Let's talk about what the come down from this game means for Purdue, because as I think we alluded to last week, this Iowa game on Saturday has been sort of nestled in between this huge trip to Nebraska and this huge home game against Michigan. And in between there, you have to turn right around, get back on a plane, and go to Iowa. Short plane ride, but still. And I was thinking of just that was already going to be hard. And now you've got this emotional overtime scenario for your game against Nebraska. And I thought a lot of that was probably playing in Iowa's favor, although Iowa is coming back off the road, and they just lost last night, Wednesday night, at Maryland, a team that Purdue just beat by 30.
Right.
So I don't know really what to make of that, because on one hand, that would tell you, it would reinforce that there is a talent differential between Purdue and Iowa. There is. Purdue is a better team than Iowa, I think, top to bottom. But Iowa gave Purdue a strong game at Mackey Arena a few weeks ago, and I think this Iowa team is probably now going to be determined to put this game from Wednesday behind it and how poorly it played in some aspects. And, there's that old, I think it's a Gene Cady adage. I don't know if he invented it, but it's often attributed to him about it doesn't matter who you play, it matters when you play them. And I think Purdue's challenge this week as a veteran team is to, as well as it played in some aspects, I don't think you would say it played a 40-minute game against Nebraska. It certainly did not play one against Oregon. So that's the kind of, does it summon that? Can it get its focus back and bring that out on Saturday in Iowa City?
Yeah, I think I said this a month ago on this podcast. Opponents always seem to lose some game they shouldn't right before playing Purdue, and it has to kind of regroup at Purdue's expense a little bit. And some teams have done better than that, better at that than others. But yeah, that score shocked me when I saw it, because not that Buzz Williams isn't a good coach, not that Maryland doesn't have talent, but Maryland has been so dysfunctional this year at times, and Purdue was helped by hitting a ton of shots out there to get a big lead, and did not surrender that big lead as it did at Nebraska. But yeah, I mean, Purdue is a better team, but to talk about people who, have these old adages, I guess, is what you use. Matt Painter said 3 or 4 years ago when Purdue was in contention to win a Big Ten title, you have to win your home games and you have to win half of your road games. That's kind of the formula to win a Big Ten championship. He also said last week that they can't afford to lose anymore because presumably he meant Michigan and Illinois weren't going to get to 3 losses. Now Illinois is at 3 losses, but Michigan's sitting there with 1 in conference play. So,
well, I think more to the point, he was saying they're not going to get to 4.
Right,
right. So, I mean, this whole thing, like Purdue is trying to share the Big Ten championship. It would need a lot of help to win it outright, especially if it loses in the game. It would need an obscene amount of help to win it outright. But I think everything I've written has been kind of with the thought in mind that this is what it would take to share the Big Ten championship.
Yeah. No, and Purdue lost at Indiana. I think that might be the only road loss in Big Ten play, if I can remember right off the top of my head.
For Purdue?
Yes.
They lost at UCLA.
Yes, UCLA too. Okay, so
you've
already got 2 road losses. If you split your road games, you're kind of right on track there, I guess. But Purdue plays at Northwestern. That's a game it should win. Plays at Ohio State, a game it should win. But that place is like the boogeyman for Purdue for whatever reason. I tell you, one time this group of seniors have won there. It took a Fletcher Lawyer last second 3-pointer when he was a freshman. So Purdue just doesn't play well in that arena for whatever reason, or doesn't match up well with Ohio State for whatever reason. So
I'll tell you something. This is getting ahead of it, but I mean, the metrics like Ohio State a lot more than the scoreboard has this season, and I feel like that just makes them a lurking team. They were a lurking team when they came to Mackey Arena last year, and they were a lurking team when Purdue went out there in 2024 after they just fired their coach and lost to them. And I don't know, like that one is kind of lurking out there too. I think there's a lot of landmines. We see the big cannon up on the hill, right? Like these giant howitzer cannons, and it's Michigan and Indiana and Michigan State are pretty much the ones remaining. But you can look at every other game that's still left on this schedule almost, I think, and say, I don't know, like that could go sideways pretty easily on a lot of teams. Northwestern was beating Michigan last night for a while into the second half, I think. And then Michigan just came downhill on them and buried them from over the last, like 15, 20 minutes, I think, or 15 minutes or so. But I've had this game kind of in the back of my mind for a while that, like, if Purdue found a way to win at Nebraska, it's just you have to find a way to. This is the test of something beyond just what they are as skilled basketball players. I think a game like Saturday at Iowa, it tests a lot of things about a team, and then you've got a quick turnaround then to come back and play Michigan. At least it's at home; they're the ones having to come in off the road. But it's still, I think this is going to, this is what they need Saturday is something that I don't think we've seen them do in a little while, which is respond to adversity that they could see coming for a while. Like they had some nice breaks in here recently. I think this is one where they need to, it's the kind of game that is supposed to decide the Big Ten championship. Like, do you pull it back together and win a lot of games in succession? That's what whoever wins the Big Ten is going to have ended up doing.
Yeah. And I don't know if the emotions carry over from Nebraska. I think some ways Purdue's probably relieved to get out of there with a win. In other ways, Purdue probably feels like, hey, we went to a top 10 teams place that's very difficult to win at and won a game, no matter how it happened. There's a lot of different ways to look at that, but now you put that in the past. Anything that happened in the Nebraska game, you move on from it. And there were a lot of positive aspects for Purdue in that game. Now it took advantage of the fact that Nebraska is not a very big team, doesn't rebound well. And that was kind of the difference in the ball game. But I think that, I felt all along that Purdue, don't want to say all along, after Nebraska got off to the 20-0 start, I thought Purdue would lose that game at Nebraska. And now it has a victory there. You said all along you thought this Iowa game was one Purdue might lose, and now I'm looking at it like, kind of flipping, and I'm thinking Purdue maybe should win this game at Iowa. So if it does, I think it sets itself up well going into that Michigan game where you have a chance to make this Big Ten race very, very interesting.
This was a somewhat tongue-in-cheek question from my editor, Nat Newell, but keeping on the topic of that Northwestern game, the Nebraska game, is wasting a beer worth causing a key turnover? So, Sam, you were in the arena. This has become like every season there's a few games that have like a lingering controversy. And explain what you saw, heard, experienced as far as Tossgate. I don't know what we want to call it. Whatever was thrown out of the crowd towards Purdue immediately preceding Nebraska players slipping on the floor, turning the ball over, and essentially giving Purdue the game.
Yeah, years ago, this is going off topic briefly, but I was at an Indiana State versus Drake men's basketball game. I think it was Drake, and somebody threw a hot dog onto the floor and it hit the official, and Indiana State got a technical foul. And people were like, how do you know that was an Indiana State fan? 1, 2, why is that a technical foul on a team that had nothing to do with this? Like, eject the fan, all this. And I thought that was the craziest thing I've ever seen. I did not see this in real time because it was on the complete opposite corner from where we sit at Nebraska. Also probably wasn't looking for it. You're not expecting that during a TV time, or I guess a called timeout. But I was waiting outside the locker room after the game and overheard 2 Nebraska security officers talking. They were talking to Andy Standifer, who's the security for Purdue's basketball team. And they said something along the lines. I was trying to like peek in without, asking questions or anything. And then I overheard the 2 Nebraska people say that they had found the culprit of who threw something on the floor, and they were going to go escort him out of the building or whatever, which the game's over by that point. It's been over for 20 minutes. But just taking that information, Matt Painter comes out of the locker room and is going to the bus or wherever he's going before departing from Lincoln. And I said, hey, Matt, did somebody throw something at you guys out on the floor? And he says, I have no idea. They told me that something happened. If they did, they missed. And so he was, it didn't disrupt Purdue and what they were doing during that timeout at all. It doesn't sound like. Didn't even know about it. But then I saw the video afterwards, and I'm always, a little bit leery when I see something on social media to just take it for truth. But I think there's enough validity to it now that clearly that happened. Nebraska has mentioned that it's doing an investigation. So I guess long story short, I didn't see it until the next morning, basically, but I had enough wherewithal, I guess, to ask about it just overhearing. And then I didn't maybe do enough with that information in the time because Matt Painter seemed to think no big deal. It didn't cost us the game. I didn't know that also possibly could have led to the final turnover for Nebraska based on where that beer or drink, whatever it was that was thrown out on the court, landed. But kind of unfortunate that a game that was that crazy ended in that fashion. But just adds to the wildness of it all, I think.
And I even said in real time on Twitter, like, oh, it's too bad that a game where all this has happened, this maybe going to get decided on a guy slipping on the court, because I had no context for it. And we still don't have the full context. Like, it's not like somebody went over and picked up a plastic cup, right? Like this. So I don't really know what was thrown on the court at that exact moment. I don't think we've been able to identify what it was. People were joking around, people I was talking to after the game, about Purdue's strategic sweating over on the sideline right before that slip had happened. So, it's just bizarre. Just it was already a bizarre night. And then to have that happen on top of it, just one of those things that it's Big Ten lore, right? Like, several years from now, Nebraska fans are going to be talking about like, oh, remember that great season? And we were right there in the thick of it. And then he slips on the floor and Purdue beats us, and whatever happens after that, right? Some
of the Twitter sleuths are thinking, I've seen the speculation that Purdue strategically placed a wet spot on the floor and then forced him to dribble the ball in that spot. And like, there's, Matt Painter has great respect for the game that Purdue would never go to those lengths. I don't think to do that. So.
Well, not only that, but I think if Purdue, I want to make sure I say this the right way. I think if Purdue were like that skillful and adept and manipulative defensively, it would be better defensively. Like it would be pulling hijinks like that all the time. But I think, the problem this year hasn't been teams being forced to do what Purdue wants to do defensively for 40 minutes for sure. So
I almost tweeted out, like, if Matt Painter was so strategic that he had his team place a water spot and then force the guy to dribble the basketball right to that spot and fall down, that's Big Ten Coach of the Year worthy, just by like masterminding that kind of a plan. Like, you can't manipulate a game in that fashion over a 30-second timeout.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's what happened. So another basketball question: when will Caden Pierce make a decision? So for people who don't know, Caden Pierce is a player that Purdue has targeted. He is already in the transfer portal, or already, I can't remember exactly how this works anymore, if he's already in or if he is, I believe he is in. I believe he has entered or said he's not playing this year for Princeton, I guess is the most important thing.
He's taking recruiting trips right now too.
Yeah, he has taken visits. So I'm pretty sure he is technically in the portal. I always forget what the timelines are on that anymore. And it may have changed since he got in because he's a grad transfer. Plus, all you have to do is enter. You don't actually have to sign anywhere or commit anywhere by any specific time. That's all on whatever school you're going to's timeline. My last indication on this, as of late last week, was, so I was originally told there would be a decision. Oh, just to finish that description, he's like a 6'7" power forward. He'd basically be the TKR replacement next season for 1 year. He's looking for a place to play for 1 year. And the other teams in the mix are like UConn and Duke, and I think Louisville might be in there. I'm forgetting. There's a couple others. But I was told originally that there would be an answer by late January. That has obviously come and gone a couple weeks ago. And I have not heard as of this morning that anything is imminent. The vibe that I get around Purdue is that they're still in it, so I don't believe they've been told we're not in it anymore. But I also unless something's changed this week. But I also don't think they have an especially positive feel on it necessarily, or especially an overly optimistic one. They don't have any reason to be optimistic about it yet. Again, I feel like everybody's kind of in limbo right now on that decision.
Yeah, and Caden Pierce is clearly working on his own timeline. He announced in June or July, I think, that he wasn't going to play for Princeton this year, was going to sit out, and was going to transfer somewhere else in the future. And people kind of immediately speculated, just because his brother plays receiver for the Indianapolis Colts, that, well, Purdue makes sense. I don't know that that's the case. His brother also was a free agent, so we don't know if his brother will be playing for the Indianapolis Colts come next season. But he's being targeted by, college basketball blue bloods, and I think he can afford to sit back and wait and make the most logical decision for himself, whether it's financially, whether it's best fit, whether it's, I think I can win a national championship here, maybe more so than the other places. So I'm not surprised he hasn't made a decision yet. He's definitely able to play his cards as long as it takes, because the season's still got 2 months left in it. So, people won't know what their rosters look like, maybe totally, until down the road. But I think he's probably taking a smart approach here to make the right decision.
Purdue will add a 4 through the transfer portal, whether it's Caden Pierce or whether it's player to be named, player to enter the portal later. They will get someone at that position, I believe, because I think they just look at their roster right now with both Trakoff and Wren and Liam Murphy leaving the roster. It's just a position where there is there's a little bit thin. And some of that comes down to, what do you call Raleigh Burgess? What can he play? What can he play substantially? Do you want to keep giving Jack Benner a lot of minutes there, or is he better where he's only exposed there for a few minutes? Can he really play like starters minutes there? I don't know if that's ideal. I mean, he did it early this season, but can he do it in the Big Ten? I don't know. It changes, obviously, what Purdue is, and it really exposes them from a rebounding standpoint, potentially, as we discussed after the game Tuesday night. So I think they will add someone. If it ends up not being Pierce, if he ends up committing to UConn or Duke or whoever, then it'll be somebody through the portal. There will be another addition through the portal, but it'll be what Purdue kind of always. I think they've put themselves in a position, though, where they're going to be a really talented program and a really successful program and an achieving program that has a niche need. That's why someone like Caden Pierce is even considering them among all these other teams. I think Gonzaga was the other school that he had visited. So whoever is like next up on that list, I would think they're going to be in good position. And quite frankly, they've got some rev share money coming off the books. So that could put them in good position as well.
Yeah, and their roster's a little bit in limbo because of the thing you reported last week about Oscar Clough.
True.
Potentially having another year of eligibility. And if that happens, you would think that Sanan Juan redshirts, or he might redshirt anyway, for all I know. But, that adds another big that has experience. So roster flexibility is something that's huge for Purdue this season. Now they kind of, I don't want to say lucked, but they found a diamond in the rough, I guess, in some ways, with Jack Benter becoming a useful 4 just because they didn't have Liam Murphy for the summer. But I think you want to find a guy that's kind of versatile that can play multiple positions as well. And Caden Pierce kind of fits that to a degree.
And you got Rivers Knight coming in with the signing class from
Right.
La Lumiere. And I, in a perfect world, I think you would give, I don't know if it involved a red shirt, but you give him and Juan time to develop, right? You don't necessarily have to throw them into the fire if they're not ready. That's worked out well for some other guys in recent history, obviously, including Jack Benter, frankly. So the Clough thing is, for people who don't know what Sam is referring to, when I talked to Oscar Clough last week, he said that he was paying attention to some decisions that are going to be coming down. I think one of the arguments is going on right now with the Trinidad Chambliss. There's some other things going on in college football as far as former junior college players and their eligibility and how much eligibility they get. Clough played 2 years of junior college and then has played, this is his 3rd year of power conference basketball or group of 5 basketball, Division I basketball. And because of the extra year that was already granted for this year while the NCAA was appealing the Diego Pavia ruling. That's why he's able to play at Purdue this year. He's in grad school. He likes the idea of getting another year of grad school paid for. The fact that you can make good money in college, probably better. I mean, I don't know. Is he an NBA player? Can he be on an NBA roster? Would he have to go G League or back to Australia or Europe to play? And can he get similar money to stay at Purdue for another year and get grad school paid for? Like, there's a lot of advantageous things, I think, for him, even for someone who is 24. And at the same time, though, he admitted, like, there's also, do you want to move on with your life? He has been a factory worker before, so he's not excited to go do that again. But he's obviously not going. That's how he kind of presented it to me. And the whole time I'm thinking, like, you're not going back. You're not going directly from here to a factory, dude. Like, you're going directly from here where you're playing basketball to playing basketball for somebody and getting paid to do it, whether it's Purdue or not. So, but it's just a thing that would, he and Jacobson continue to be the tandem they are. You've got Raleigh Burgess in the mix down there. Whoever they bring in from the portal, maybe that is the scenario where they wouldn't have to. Then you would have Burgess to just be mostly a 4 at that point. I don't know. I think there's a lot that is TBD. But as far as Caden Pierce, that's the latest that we know. It's been kind of radio silent.
Yeah.
That's all that needs to be said, I guess.
Yeah. Move on to the next question.
You go ahead and read it off if you got it there in front of you.
Let me find it here. What is the best bet for a pregame meal at Purdue? And that is not XXX. So I'm guessing they're saying take XXX out of the equation. I don't think that's a slander on XXX. I think everybody just says XXX, right? Like, if you think, oh, you got to go to XXX, like for some reason that's famous. Well, for good reason it's famous. But I think they're saying let's branch out. So my pregame meals at Purdue have either been Puccini's Pizza in the past, or Domino's, or sandwiches from Ripple and Company. So we take advantage of the free meals that we get, I guess, in this industry, or at least I do.
Yeah, but you've lived here a long time. You can suggest other places.
I would say this was a post-game meal that I went to after the Purdue-Ohio State game in football this past season, but it qualifies. I guess you could do pregame. I really like Bert's Pizza downtown Lafayette. It's the same family as Pequod's for people who know Chicago pizza. It's got Chicago deep dish, which there's not a lot of options for that in Indiana, period, let alone in Lafayette area. So that would be a suggestion that I would toss out there. But just be aware that deep dish pizza takes a little bit more time to bake than a standard, thin crust or rising crust pizza. So you're going to probably have to wait at least 45 minutes for that thing to bake, and then, better eat it with a fork after that. But I think that's a pretty good option for a pregame meal if you haven't been there.
Yeah, I have not been there yet. It doesn't really work out for me time-wise. I'm not going to probably order pizza and drive it all the way back to Indianapolis to eat it. But staying on the pizza theme, I threw Bruno's out there. I think that's just a classic, right? One pregame meal I did have last year when some friends were in town before a basketball game was Black Sparrow, which is downtown Lafayette off the courthouse square there. Just a place, good craft beer. I wasn't drinking, but good craft beers and good food. And then if it's a Wednesday game, Sam, you're gonna have to tell me if this is still true. If it's a Wednesday game, you're hitting the other pub or Walt's Pub, right? For the wings special, half price wings or 2-for-1 wings or whatever it is. But that's a long time Lafayette favorite.
Yeah, so you buy at least 6 wings, you get 6 free. So it's basically 12 wings for half price. And yes, for years we did the after the pub closed down in downtown Lafayette, we did the Journal and Courier all area football team meetings there on Wednesday specifically, so everybody could load up on wings and have a good time. But yes, having gone there on a Wednesday just 2 weeks ago, that's a good option as well. Not a lot of Wednesday games that I can think of with the Big Ten TV schedule anyway.
No, it hasn't really worked out that way, but just keep that in mind. If you're ever up on a Wednesday, that's I haven't actually taken advantage of it since I came back, and I need to find a reason to be up here on a Wednesday night. Let's wrap up with this one. I think we've done enough sports writer complaining, so there's another question we're just going to keep kicking it down the line because it has to do with the Big Ten tournament. And I don't want to go on that rant tonight. So we're going to leave with this. With Braden Smith being Purdue's best guard, have you ever wanted to ask him if he wants to guard and defend the opposition's best guard? I'm specifically surprised he didn't give up offense to shut down Illinois' guards' offense. Thoughts on that? I think we have talked to Braden Smith over the years about defense. Matt Painter gave me an in-depth answer to a question similar to this that wasn't about Braden Smith. It was about CJ Cox in his role being the lead defender or the guy who often takes on the best scorer on the other team, best perimeter scorer, and guards or wings. And how a player, especially like a second-year player, as he's seen other players do it, Rafael Davis, Dakota Mathias, how do they sort of take on, how do they respond to that identity? Because that's going to bring its own challenges. Because once word gets around that like, oh, that's our defensive stopper, that's the guy Purdue puts on the other team's best player. Well, now that best player on every team is going to come into the game being like, all right, challenge accepted. I'm going to show you what it's really like to guard the other team's best player. And I've sort of been working in the background on some things related to CJ Cox and defense, but Matt Painter's point being that is an assignment, that is a role he often takes, but they switch so much that it's all the guards get a piece of whoever that is in any given game. And Braden Smith is the one that I think we have seen them at times, especially if it's a lead guard type player, and it makes sense from a size standpoint. He will move on to him as like the primary assignment.
Yeah, and Braden Smith did guard Keaton Wagler during that game. Everybody did, because you had to, this isn't working, try something else. And I mean, that's just a rare occurrence where a guy can't miss a shot, no matter what you did against him. He hit some tremendous shots that you would hope that you could force the other team's best player to take, and he just made them. You tip your cap when that happens a little bit. But in the past, I had talked to Braden about this, and he liked, because of the makeup of the teams that he's been on in the past, he liked playing off the ball and not having to spend so much energy on the defensive end that he can manipulate teams on the offensive end. I don't think that's the case anymore. He guards on the ball quite a bit more. As you mentioned, they switch a lot. So a guy can come off a screen and he has to pick up CJ Cox's man, for example. You've seen him guarding, on ball a lot more this year than I think he has in his career. And I think his next step in basketball, if he becomes an NBA player, he's going to be asked to do that quite a bit. And that's something that last year, I remember Matt Painter said he is capable of doing that, but at the next level, that's probably going to be his primary role, is like going in there and, coming off the bench and guarding a guy and just doing the guy for the Pacers, what's his name? TJ McConnell, being kind of a menace for, a 10-minute stretch on a guy and locking a guy down a little bit. So he's capable of it, but he does so much for Purdue. You don't want to, he plays 40 minutes every single game almost too. You don't want him just, bogged down by the end of those games. And as, cardiovascularly enhanced as he is compared to most people, I still think you want to have him having some reserves for a situation like you had Tuesday night in Nebraska.
Yeah, I do think his biggest asset is offense. And when they can do things that help him preserve energy on defense, I think that it's a net benefit for Purdue. The other thing to remember, though, is Matt Painter has often referred to him as being like a free safety. So if you're going to make the football analogy here, like it'd be like CJ Cox, and like body type wise, this would be flipped. But like CJ Cox is more like the cornerback. He's like the press man coverage cornerback who's getting in the face of the ball handler or the best player, or whatever. And then you've got Braden Smith, kind of like his Westfield brethren, Dylan Thieneman, just sort of swooping in. And we've seen him do this a lot. Like he's a defensive asset off the ball, swooping in, getting steals, getting deflections. And he takes some gambles sometimes. Sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't. But we have seen it, I really think, starting like the middle of last year. I kind of remember it right around the Oregon-Washington trip. It really started to ramp up, where he became much more active and a steals-driven defender. And that's come and gone, depending on the matchup. But we have also seen that be an asset defensively. So it's not always just that his strength would maybe be shutting somebody down. It's using everybody's strengths in concert with each other. So I think you will see him on the ball against other lead guards. But I also understand the strategy that they're coming from and where it might benefit Purdue most at the end of the day.
Yeah. I've got to duck out of here. We've pushed this last question off, but I think because it pertains to Big Ten tournament locations, it might be good to maybe
that's what I was saying,
even for another couple of weeks.
We'll kick it down the road, but it's coming, Eric Nowlin. Your answer is coming.
But Big Ten tournament is in Chicago at United Center this year. We've both covered tournaments there. And that probably
it's a preview.
Similar experience. Not that it's bad or anything, but I think there's better options. So we'll touch on that down the road.
I think it's kind of bad, but that's just me. Again, I said no more sports writer complaining. People don't want to hear that. They've heard enough other things from us tonight. So thanks for joining us. And we will both be in Iowa City on Saturday. So we'll be chatting with you more this weekend after Purdue plays at Iowa. Thanks, and we'll see you then.